Hello, hello, good afternoon. On behalf of the government of Guatemala, we're here and we're giving you the most cordial invitation to sit down, please, and listen to this press conference that we have prepared for you. We're going to be learning about the position of Guatemala in this COP29, and I have the honor of having with us two personalities with us, the Vice Minister of the Environment and Natural Resources, Dr. Edwin Castellanos, and also the Minister of Energy and Mines, Victor Hugo Ventura Ruiz. And so please, applauses for them. You have the room, Doctor.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. As head of the delegation of Guatemala, I would like to thank you for this space. This is a moment where we want to share with you the initiative that our country is undertaking to confront the challenges of climate change. We are going to see a video in which we are going to emphasize both the adaptation and the mitigation initiative that we have in the country. As a small country, we contribute very little to the problem, but we are feeling the impacts of the situation very strongly. As a result, we are doing our part in reducing our emissions, but more importantly, we are emphasizing adaptation in our activities. We have been experiencing a very extreme weather patterns in the last years. We are going very quickly from temporary droughts all the way to heavy rainfalls and flooding, everything within weeks in a given month. This year was a very good example in which we had the driest month of May usually the beginning of the rainy season, the driest month of May in the last decade, and then that caused a lot of forest fires, a lot of losses in the crops for small farmers who practice rain-fed agriculture. And then within 1 week, we had the wettest June in 10 years, which brought us floods and landslides and the problems like that. So we are definitely feeling the impacts of climate change, and for that, we are acting as government to help our people, but we need the help of the international community to confront these challenges. In order to emphasize more our initiatives in terms of mitigation, I would like to ask our Minister of Energy and Mining to give some brief remarks in terms of the different initiatives that we are undertaking, both in the energy and the transportation sector. Please, Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Castellanos. Thank you for being with us in this conference. Our main activities in energy are related with the just transition or the fair transition. In Guatemala, we have a very big trouble because about 400,000 families that represent 2 million people doesn't have access to electricity. So one of the main projects that we are initiating is just to extend the networks and also to promote isolated solutions and small network, small grids for the autonomous solution of that energy problem for these families. We also are considering that it's necessary to continue with our energy transition and to permit the growing of new renewable energy in our system. So we are preparing 2 big tenders for extend and build new lines and substations and a new power plants that represent about 1,000 megawatts of new energy that we will be making the process during the first months of next year. All, when you put together, will represent investment of about $4.5 billion. It's a big amount of money. Some part come from the government, another part for the private sector, and another for loans, and of course for cooperation. And so it's very important that we all the community and all the cooperation come and help Guatemala in this very important process. Also, we have another important initiative, for example, the case of the use of biofuels. We will begin using biofuels. The program will begin in January of 2026, and we propose to replace 10% of the gasoline with national biofuels producing the sugar beets that also will reduce the greenhouse gases emission. And of course, we have promoting the electromobility, and also the government has a very big project that are working that for the massive transportation of people with the first system that will be begin at the end of this decade. As you know, transportation is one of the main activities that using hydrocarbon and produce a lot of greenhouse gases emission. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Ventura. To those initiatives in the energy sector, I would like to just add that we are also working strongly in the forestry sector, which right now is the main sector producing emissions of greenhouse gases. Our goal within this government in the next 3 years is to be able to increase the reforestation and the forest protection initiatives so that we come to a net zero deforestation balance by the end of our government, meaning that we are going to slow down deforestation rates, we are going to increase regeneration of forests, and by the end of the government, we will have a stable forest cover from the country, and from then, we are hoping to recover our forest cover. Forest has been very important in our country. The name of Guatemala actually means land of forest, and unfortunately, we have lost a lot of that forest in recent years. So our goal is to reverse that trend and to recover our country as a country of forests. Thank you.
Thank you for these wonderful messages. And now we're ready for our official video, very short one from Guatemala. So please, if we can have the lights go down a little bit. Thank you. Afterwards, you're going to be able to ask questions and the answers. Well, it seems like we have some technical problems right now.
Guatemala, a richly diverse, multilingual, and multicultural country, blends the ancestral knowledge of its indigenous Maya and Xinca people with nature, playing a key role in the sustainable management of natural resources and the conservation of biodiversity, ecosystems, and water resources. Although Guatemala's contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions is minimal, it is particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate variability. Our country promotes the resilience of its most vulnerable communities, aligned with the Convention on Biological Diversity, among other international agreements. Due to its climate vulnerability, Guatemala has established the National Council on Climate Change and the Guatemalan System of Climate Change Sciences, bringing together research centers, national climate change roundtables, including the Indigenous Roundtable, and civil society participation forums. In light of its vulnerability, Guatemala strongly supports the global targets of the Paris Agreement, implementing actions to reduce emissions by conserving its forests, water, and biodiversity. Guatemala recognizes that it is essential to include women, youth, and indigenous peoples as their voices and experiences are crucial for developing innovative, sustainable, and equitable solutions to tackle the impacts of climate change. This commitment is reflected in the Gender and Climate Change Action Plan, which takes a different approach to addressing women's needs, with particular emphasis on indigenous women.
Soy Patricia Orantes, ministra de Ambiente y Recursos Naturales de Guatemala, y quiero el día de hoy contarles por qué es tan importante hablar de cambio climático y participar en todos los esfuerzos globales y nacionales para contener este fenómeno tan tremendo que es el cambio de nuestro clima a nivel planetario. Y todo eso está teniendo impactos tremendos en la agricultura, echando a perder cosechas y por lo tanto elevando los precios de los alimentos de la canasta básica.
This year, due to extreme weather events, the prices of food increased by 17%. Adapting to climate change is therefore a priority for Guatemala, which faces significant challenges compounded by a legacy of inequality and poverty. Rapid, coordinated action across different sectors is essential, grounded in the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities.
Pues a raíz de la Conferencia de las Partes que fue en 2015 en París, Guatemala se comprometió a reducir sus emisiones en 11.2% al año 2030. La verdad es que a la fecha hemos avanzado en conseguir esa meta.
Although Guatemala accounts for only 0.11% of global emissions, it has committed to increasing its goal in its nationally determined contribution by 2035, aligned with its national capacities and circumstances. Currently, it has achieved about half of this goal through efforts in the forestry sector. These advances have been achieved mainly through efforts aimed at the conservation, protection, and sustainable management of forests, reducing degradation caused by unsustainable firewood use and forest fires. Additionally, Guatemala has committed to a 22.6% emissions reduction with international support to be achieved through partnerships across public and private sectors, civil society, academia, and indigenous peoples. Guatemala also plans to restore degraded areas and establish forest plantations, considering vulnerable communities and building their capacity to face future challenges.
Mi nombre es Edwin Castellano, soy viceministro de Recursos Naturales y Cambio Climático. Como parte de los países en desarrollo, esperamos que realmente se logre una reducción drástica de las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero. Los estudios científicos, especialmente del panel de expertos a nivel mundial, IPCC, nos indican que debemos de alcanzar ya un pico en las emisiones y lograr una reducción de por lo menos el 40% de esas emisiones para el 2030. Es decir, tenemos que empezar a trabajar muy fuertemente en buscar esas opciones limpias que nos permitan seguir desarrollándonos, pero sin seguir contaminando la atmósfera.
Over the past 20 years, Guatemala has seen an increase in average temperature by 0.8% centigrade, intensifying extreme weather events. This year alone, Guatemala experienced a shift from extreme drought to heavy rains within 1 month, leading to flooding, human losses, and considerable damage. For example, drought conditions caused a 10% drop in hydroelectric generation. while forest fires devastated over 178,000 hectares, marking a 560% increase compared to the past decade.
Estamos ya viviendo extremos, tanto de sequía como de exceso de lluvia, y estos extremos están afectando todos los aspectos de nuestra vida, la producción de alimentos, nuestra salud, nuestra economía, nuestro transporte. De esa cuenta todos tenemos que estar conscientes y tenemos que aportar en las diferentes formas que podamos para lograr esta solución que tiene que ser local, pero también tiene que ser global.
From 1998 to 2023, Guatemala invested $776 million of its own resources in forest incentives, aiming to achieve zero net deforestation in the coming years. This goal will be realized by strengthening the national system of protected areas and forestry programs, providing communities with results-based payments.
En el caso de Guatemala, la mitad de esos gases que nosotros aportamos vienen de la deforestación. Y por eso en este gobierno queremos tener una ambición, una meta ambiciosa, fuerte, para reducir la deforestación, llevarla a cero. Y a partir de ahí empezar a recuperar la cobertura boscosa de Guatemala, que significa en náhuatl, Guatemalán, tierra de bosques. Somos muy vulnerables y por eso tenemos un interés particular en ponerle un alto al cambio del clima.
Guatemala anticipates a first payment from the World Bank for its efforts to prevent deforestation and increase forest cover under the Guatemalan Emissions Reduction Program. This will help women, youth, indigenous peoples, and other vulnerable groups adapt more effectively to the impacts of climate change.
Ahora vamos con un sentido de llevar una meta más alta, donde la reducción de la deforestación, gracias al fortalecimiento de los programas de incentivos forestales que queremos hacer en estos años, y de otras formas de reducir la deforestación, cuidar nuestras áreas protegidas, trabajar con los bosques comunales, los bosques indígenas.
Guatemala aims for 80% of its energy to come from renewable sources and seeks to adopt sustainable technologies across sectors. By 2026, for example, gasoline is expected to contain 10% ethanol.
Una buena razón es que la matriz energética empezamos a dejar atrás fuentes no renovables, ¿verdad?, de hidrocarburos, y empezamos a hacer nuestra matriz energética mucho más cargada hacia la energía solar, la energía hidroeléctrica. Esa es una buena noticia. También el apoyo de los bosques comunales e indígenas, que mantienen muchos bosques en la mayoría del país gracias a sus buenas prácticas.
Guatemala has allocated $6.5 million to the National Climate Change Fund, with 80% directed to adaptation and 20% to mitigation. In the agricultural sector, mitigation and adaptation measures have been implemented in crops like sugar, bananas, coffee, and palm. The sugarcane agribusiness generates clean energy from sugarcane biomass, covering 14% of the national annual demand, and up to 32% in rural areas, thereby contributing to GHG emission reductions.
Somos un país en vías de desarrollo, un país que estamos luchando por salir adelante, y el tema del cambio climático nos está poniendo una presión adicional para lograr el desarrollo. De esa cuenta nosotros internamente estamos tomando muchas medidas, tanto para reducir nuestras emisiones como para adaptarnos, pero definitivamente necesitamos del apoyo internacional para que esas medidas puedan ampliarse en su alcance y también en su temporalidad.
To empower local communities with training and access to information, Guatemala is strengthening risk management and early warning systems, including efficient irrigation for small producers, promoting sustainable agricultural practices, and continuing to advance forest, biodiversity, and water management. Successful implementation of these measures will require coordinated efforts among the government, private sector, civil society, and international partners. Keys to success will be climate financing, capacity building, technology transfer, and strengthened cooperation.
Pero estas actividades tienen que aumentarse en términos de su influencia, en términos de su temporalidad, y por lo tanto necesitamos tener ese apoyo financiero de la comunidad internacional.
For these reasons, Guatemala urgently calls on major powers to lead with technical, technological, and financial support for countries suffering the tragic consequences of climate change. We ask the international community to implement ambitious national strategies to ensure compliance with the NDCs and enhance contributions to prevent global temperatures from rising more than 1.5 degrees centigrade by the end of the century. There must be fair, equitable, swift, and effective access to international climate financing so that countries like Guatemala can rapidly implement large-scale actions to reduce the vulnerability of communities most affected by climate change.
Hay un sentido de urgencia muy fuerte porque los países industrializados realmente no están moviéndose a la velocidad que necesitamos y los científicos nos están diciendo que vamos a sobrepasar la meta del 1.5% grados centígrados, lo cual nos pone realmente en mayor peligro de lo que ya estamos. La juventud nos está pidiendo a gritos que no le heredemos un planeta en desastre.
Thank you. Now the floor is open for questions and answers.
Thank you. It's good to hear from you. I'm Sarah Schoenhart from Politico's E&E News. You talked about needing international support, financial support. Where would you like that to come from?
The international support needs to come from the developed countries, and it can be done from public funds. It could also come from support by multilateral organizations. It could be banks, as long as it doesn't increase our debt, because debt will always hurt our economy. So we are aiming and we are asking here to have a stronger support by the developed countries in the form of funds that are not linked to debt.
Question over there? Yes. Over there. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. José Vicente Bernabeu for AFP News Agency. I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a number, like which quantity Guatemala considers would need from the developed country to get this goal of protecting. Well,
like we expressed in the video, basically we are doing our best to to work with adaptation and with mitigation, but the budget to do so is just much higher than what we can actually produce internally. And every time we have an extreme weather event, the amount of losses and damages are so high that, for example, with a hurricane, one single year, we can stop our GDP growth for that year. So for sure, we need increased financial support from developed countries, both to help us with adaptation and with mitigation initiatives.
One last question over there. Young lady.
Esme Salah, BBC News. On the mitigation text, what are the chances of getting an agreement and that it will go any further than what was agreed last year in Dubai?
Could you repeat the question again, please?
What are the chances of getting an agreement on mitigation, and will it go any further than last year?
Que si el acuerdo de mitigación va a ir un poquito más, incrementar que lo que estuvo en Dubái. Sí.
For sure, we need to have a stronger commitment on mitigation. Mitigation is really the best adaptation in the long run. If we don't stop the increase in temperature, then even if we have the funding, adaptation is not going to be possible. So we for sure need to have mitigation along with the support from the international community for financing. Both mitigation and financing are crucial for our fight against climate change.
Agradecemos a todos su asistencia. Parece que ya nos pasamos de tiempo. We are over time. So thank you very much, and let's give a big hand to our two dignitaries.
Nermine düzelmedi.